Today's presentation will be for Rockingham EDC. It's Lee Cochran. And hopefully she's gotten the
Rockingham County.
Hi.
That's where the tax strip is,
Here we
right?
go. Okay.
There's a meat processor.
All right, Lee, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, great. I'm PJ Gentry. How are you? I don't know if you can see me. I'm over here somewhere. Here I am.
I see your hand.
And I was just introducing you to this is the task force here for Person County. And I have Randy King, Cecil Barker, Keith Epstein, David Z. Zilkowski, and Tommy Winstead. So we're just delighted to have you here to kind of give us your story of how your EDC works, what you like, what you change, what's been successful for you. If you could give us an overview, because we are trying to develop a better program for our county.
Sure. The organization here that I'm a part of is we are a county organization. So there used to be a public-private partnership in Rockingham County years ago. That relationship or organization dissolved about maybe 8 years ago. I've been here for 2 years, by the way, just to bring you up to date there. Now we are a public organization, but we have a nonprofit arm, if you will, but there's no formal relationship between the two. This is the first organization in economic development that I've ever worked in that is not a public-private partnership. So it's to me, it was a little interesting to hear that they dissolved the public-private partnership, because most groups are going towards that type of relationship and organization for a variety of reasons. And you're probably all aware of these. So if you are, just, tell me to be quiet, move on. But, some of the biggest are just around funding. And it's really important to bring your business community into the fold of economic development, kind of get their buy-in. So whether that's other manufacturing organizations or your banking institutions, you really, I think it's important to have industry at the table. So public-private partnerships are something that I think work well. It works here the way it is. The private organization, which is called our Citizens for Economic Development, is not as, I think, active as we would like for them to be. And I think that's because they don't necessarily have any ownership, if you will, in the organization. Or any real oversight from it, because all of the hiring and firing comes from the county manager's office, and then from myself through through the department. So that's something I would just mention to you, is that I think public-private partnerships work really nicely if you're looking to maybe change up how it's done. And I'm not sure exactly how you're doing it now, but I do think that that's and it does give some flexibility in funding and ability to go do some fundraising. So whether that's if you're in need of product, shell buildings or industrial parks or shovel-ready sites and that sort of thing, that can really, help boost that piece of your program. And then another thing that I really like about this organization and others that I've worked in would be looking at a holistic approach to economic development. So not just looking at economic development through the lens of industrial recruitment, but looking at it through the lens of obviously existing industry and making sure you're serving those needs, but small business and entrepreneurship and tourism. Tourism to me is some of the best economic development any community can do because, people come in, they spend their dollars, and then you have money that you can do other things with instead of having to invest in infrastructure, schools, that sort of thing. So those are some pieces that I definitely think, and since I have been here over the past 2 years, I've also gotten more involved in really residential type, recruitment and development, making sure that like DR Horton and those groups know who we are, know what tracts of land are available, where there's water and sewer, where densities can be maximized and that sort of thing, which is a little new, I think, if you will, for an economic developer, or at least it is for me, in my experience. So I guess those are some of the key points I would just kind of initially say. And you have to, I would think that your program has to always be very forward and moving, and being an outward facing, type organization. So having someone that's kind of the face of your county or community, understands your programs, understands your product, and then is also very transparent in what your strengths and your weaknesses are. The last thing any community, I think, wants to do is recruit a company that can't be successful there, because that's the best and easiest way to lose credibility with in site selection community, EDP&C, commerce, anybody else. So just being very transparent and open about, what you can support and what you can't, So for example, we're not really going after bio companies. We don't have the workforce or the labor force that could handle that. We're not in that type of demographic, and that's okay. So just kind of knowing, who you are, and I think what, what you can be successful with is also, really important. And I guess the other, just thinking of like structure, if you will, is that we are really independent. Our organization, we're even in our own separate building. It's a staff of 6 of us, which is small business, tourism, existing industry, and admin support. So being able to, not always have to, or not being micromanaged, I think is also key in this job. You have to have some flexibility to, run down, projects, do what you need to do some negotiating, even before talking to leadership, if you will, to make sure you kind of know where things are going and how it's going to be moving forward. But I think I've done a lot of talking, so I'll stop and ask if there are any specific questions, or how you guys want to maybe pick my brain or not.
Are you at liberty to say why the private partnership dissolved, or do you have any knowledge of what happened to that?
So from what I understand is that the partnership, there was a director involved in my position, and I think there were a couple of county commissioners that wanted that person fired, but they didn't have any control over the firing of the person. So instead they just dissolved the organization, and pulled kind of funding back from it. So instead of addressing, the issue or the elephant in the room, they just, blew up what could work. Yeah.
So just, I think I got it, but I just want to be explicit. So 100% of your funding, you are a budget line item in the county budget. Is that just to make sure?
Yes.
And does that stay consistent, or can you kind of walk through? I don't need necessarily numbers, but just like the categories, how much for staff? Do you do any development, or just kind of, I'd just like to know your funding, what the inflows and outflows and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so our funding, we are a line item budget. It's about $540, maybe $1,000 a year or so for the department. That excludes any incentives or anything like that. That's just, staff, but of course all the perks that come with that, the benefits, that sort of stuff, marketing, travel, that sort of thing. Now, when it comes to product development, that is where, so the private piece, we have about an $80,000 a year type budget that we work out of and manage with them. And that could be looking at, evaluating different sites, doing phase 1s or phase 2s if we need to. That group also does pay like a bonus depending on how the year has gone. So that, and then some like the wining and dining type travel comes out of the private arm. So that's how, I guess, the structure of the organization is.
And the private arm is the Citizens for Economic Development,
Exactly.
just to make sure okay, got it.
Yep.
Where do they get their funds from?
That's all made up of private organizations and individuals or members. So it's annual membership dues.
Okay.
You talked about the holistic approach. Is there a separate tourism organization, Chamber of Commerce? How do the others factor into the overall structure?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So here we have, and I have a tourism manager, but we also have a TDA. So we have a Tourism Development Authority that was formed. So that collects a percentage of occupancy tax. So that helps fund the tourism piece of our marketing efforts, which would be an additional almost $200,000 a year. So you're looking at a total budget of what, $700 and maybe $50,000 between traditional economic development and then, the tourism, the TDA dedicated funding. But then we also have in our county, we have 3 chambers of commerce. So when I first took this job, I told Lance Metzler, our sorry, my watch just went off. Our county manager, my boss, I said, Lance, you failed to tell me that I was running a regional organization in a county, because Rockingham County can be very divided from Reedsville. We have 6 different municipalities in the same county. So Reedsville, Eden, and then what we call Western Rockingham County, which is Madison, Mayodan, and Stoneville. And so Reedsville has a chamber, Eden has a chamber, and Madison, Mayodan, and Stoneville, the western side, has a chamber of commerce. And we work really well with all of them. I think it's a shame we have 3, but that's, what are you going to do? But we work with them, and they do some promoting of their own assets as well.
Thank you.
Lee, can you speak on site specific, like shell building, pad ready sites, how you guys handle the development side of that?
So that's going to be new for developing or handling that here. We've not done I take this back. The CED, so that's Citizens for Economic Development Group, back in the 90s, built a shell building with participation from the county and the city of Eden. And that is now a company called Enofa, but that building sat for years. And so there's not been an appetite in Rockingham County to do spec building or even invest really in shovel ready sites. So we have, and quite honestly, at this point, we don't have really any product. We don't have any real buildings to speak of. What we would have are old, antiquated, low ceiling heights. Some even still have wood floors, so you can put a tow motor on it. So we're out of a lot of product. And so now, and because of some of the successes that we've been able to have, we're looking to at least grade some sites so we can be a little closer, more competitive for that time to market that so many companies are looking for right now. So what we would do is we would partner with whatever. So we also own an industrial park with Reedsville, for example. We would partner with our municipal partner and the CED to pull together the funding to grade the site if we wanted to. If we wanted to do a shell building, for example, we would probably put out an RFP, see if there was any interest in somebody from say a Samet or an Omega, like some other construction company to share either in that risk with us or we could build it and do, carry the carrying costs for X, number of years or something like that with our municipal partner. So that's how we would approach getting some product on the market.
Go ahead.
Can you speak to the setup of your board, how they're appointed, how the terms and different things that the structure,
For the CED.
both?
Okay, so my direct boss is the county manager, and then our county commissioners. So that's that structure. From the public side, that's that board. And then the Citizens for Economic Development has a board that is elected from the membership. It's 18 people. It's a lot of people on the board. I'm an ex officio member, and I'll be happy to send or share our bylaws if you'd like to see those.
Please, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, let me make myself a note. And that will outline, how terms are rotated. We have a couple of just ex officio placements, like for myself for this position, for the director of the community college, the superintendent of public schools, and then we have 2 hospitals here. So those are all ex officio members, but everybody else is from the membership.
All voting members? Except for the ex officio?
18 people are, we probably have 50 or more members, but 18 on the board, yeah.
And so your county doesn't have a board, you're just directly working with the manager and the county commissioners.
Exactly. And quite honestly, with this structure, with it being completely separate, the CED board, we meet once a quarter, really. They don't approve, anything. We just kind of give them updates. They don't have any say or any real stake or ownership over the program, which I think is I don't think that is the best way to structure it. I think it should have remained a public-private partnership. So there would be a little more, say and buy-in from the private community members and companies.
So you had mentioned some recent successes. Can you just for my knowledge, maybe talk to them and maybe talk a little bit about the process and how you think you kind of got the deals? Because I've sort of heard about some of your success, but I'd love to just hear it from you.
Sure. I guess the first one was Pella Windows. That was actually my second job, so that was fun. But they, we're looking for sites. Greensboro was our competition. Right off of 85 was a building that they were looking at there. And then Virginia was our, the second finalist, if you will. I think a site in South Hill area. And, it was interesting doing economic development in North Carolina because I'm from Virginia. So that's my what I had known and how I had worked with BEDP and their Department of Commerce and stuff in Virginia, and working here was quite different. But, really it's, and so whether it's Pella or Purina now is here, Ontex, Farmina, Gildan Yarns, Ruger has done some expansion. I mean, I think we've announced almost $800 million and 1,100 jobs in 2 years. And I think a lot of that has to do with getting some momentum early and kind of keeping that, maintaining it, and being able to really, talk to and showcase that we're connected through interstate systems, which really helps. So we have I-73 that's on the western side of our county, and then 29 is designated as I-785. So being connected to the world through an interstate system and so close to the Piedmont Triad MSA, with that kind of being able to pull that diverse workforce is really, I think, helpful for us in being able to land these types of jobs.
Makes sense. Thank you. I guess, did you come along after Miller Brewing closed?
Yes, yeah, Miller
Okay.
closed in 2016. They announced in 2015 and they closed in 2016. And
Did y'all change anything to kind of, because that was a major employer with anything really, I guess drastically different?
No,
Okay.
So
no.
what's really different on the process between, say, Virginia and here? What are some of the biggest differences or challenges in economic development that you've experienced making the transition from Virginia to North Carolina?
It really it's the relationship between the Department of Commerce and EDP&C. The Pella project was, literally Pella called me over Easter weekend in 2019, I guess, and said, how fast can we stop in North Carolina and announce in Virginia? Because we have equipment on order and we're not hearing back from anyone at Commerce or EDP&C. And we just feel like they don't care, about us being here.
North Carolina?
North Carolina, yes.
Oh,
So that's the biggest issue. And Secretary Copeland and I have had very, very candid conversations around this issue. So I think one of the other reasons why we've been so successful in landing some of the projects is that we really manage them ourselves. We don't let EDP&C manage them. We don't let Commerce manage them. We make those relationships and we manage it all the way to the end because there's a big disconnect from the marketing side of EDP&C, of whom we love. I mean, we like both organizations. But then when you're really getting down to the nitty gritty to sign paperwork and make an announcement and make these commitments to each other, it's like EDP&C fell off the face of the earth and Commerce acts like they've never heard of the project before or knows, anyone from the company representative. So you have to start all over again. And it's an absolute nightmare. So after Pella, after learning that experience and working through all of that, we manage the projects ourselves all the way through. We're a very, very hands-on local economic development organization.
Are you the ones going out and making the initial connections to these companies?
Sometimes, yes. I would say we have probably maybe a third of our leads come directly to us. Now that's either from consultants that we already know, or companies that have maybe read about us and said, hey, we're looking at a spot. Can you tell us more about your community? And then the rest come from really EDP&C. But so it's a little bit of both.
Do you have a recruiter on board there? Or do you hire that out?
No, that's my, really my job is to promote and recruit companies, work with site selection consultants to make sure they know who we are and that sort of thing. No, we don't hire that out.
How much staff are you carrying?
I have a marketing manager, an existing industry manager, tourism manager, small business, and an admin. So 5 additional folks.
Everybody's taking notes here.
So you mentioned a couple $100,000 from tourism. Does their board decide where those funds get dispersed, or do you have any input? How does that work?
So we really craft, that board is similar to the CED board in the sense that we really craft the budget and that mission and that program and they, approve it, if you will. That's how that works. I mean, we have a lot to say. We have, I wouldn't say all to say, but we have 99% of the say of what happens in the tourism and where our focus areas are going to be, what we're working on and that sort of thing.
Mhm. Any questions, guys?
Just like to thank you so much for your time, Lee.
Yeah, no, thank you. And if you have any other questions or need any information, let me know, but I'll send those bylaws to PJ shortly.
Great. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for your time. We appreciate it very
Yeah,
much.
be safe.
Thanks.
No. Bye. Thank you guys. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Very nice.
Mhm.
Stunned by the success they had. They're not a huge town.
No. In 2 years.
In
2 years, it's humbling to be honest.
It just shows that it's doable.
It is.
Absolutely.
No, it
It's
is.
very doable. So,
With that kind of success, they probably have the ability to garner a lot of support when it comes time for budgeting for the county. Because it's obviously an investment that the county's making a pretty handsome return on. But she said they're fortunate to have independence, but it sounds like the independence that she enjoys is because of the current personalities and relationships that she has within county government, rather than some kind of a structure that ensures there's independence, because they don't have that private component. If I heard correctly, one of the things that she might change would be a private-public partnership balance between private funding, even though she's not sounds suffering from a lack of funding at this point or a lack of autonomy, but there's nothing that really protects that going forward
mhm.
from what I could get.
They've got that Citizens for Economic Development Board. It could be an economic engine if it was, maybe it's the leadership of the board. I think it all comes down to leadership. Who's leading the charge in organization and effort. So, maybe changes in that kind of thing, because I think that's really important. Like, say, if you're looking at starting a private organization here in Person County, who's tapped to lead it? How's it going to run? How's it going to function? That kind of thing. Because the initial momentum has to get going. Once the wheels are turning and it's spinning, then it's easy to keep going. But it's the initial setup to be that other, anchor for economic development. So you've got that partnership with the county and private. The private sector can move so much more quickly and raise resources and do things that the county has to be continually under the glass with meetings, videos, things like that, and it helps the process. It's an aid to the process.
Tenured leader from the beginning.
Pardon?
A tenured leader from the beginning can be incredible glue to hold it together.
I keep calling the top salesman for First Chat.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I mentioned, Mac last week. Mac talked to us, and he's retiring, and I did speak with him, and he said, "Gee, I wish we could hire somebody like you from a part-time standpoint to get an engine going in our county." He said, "That's a really good idea. I might be interested." I'm like, "Well, how would we do that? How could we, do something like that with someone that's got the experience, but,
the first 3 or 4 months, I'll be an assessment of what's going on, man.
mhm,
What we're doing, who's doing what.
mhm.
I think it would require something like a campaign drive to get that money in place. Then the other component of it
Yeah.
comes into possibly hiring, and then build stack down under that possibly.
I think one thing, PJ is touching on it, that we've been missing is the private side funding, if we had had an organization that was fruitful and in recruiting business, and we had some large donors that request money or something like Brandon Burnett, you know, if we had had that organization, he was instrumental in getting the airport. You know, so he had skin in the game, you know, he put a lot of time and effort in it. So I think if we had an organization like that, that was up and running, and you have people like this, says, you know what, when I leave here, I'm gonna will $10 million to that organization, because I think they put it back to work in Person County. Do they go to the state? Do they go anywhere else? It works right here in Person County. And then, you know, you pay the bills off the interest for that money. But I think for the lack of not having that here now, we're missing the boat on getting funding that, you know, pays over and over again. And not having to come out with dues every year and ask for more dues and that sort of thing. That part of it, I think we missed, Person County missed.
Sounds,
Like a foundation.
it sounds to me like the private professional fundraisers that some of these counties have, or some of these agencies have employed, I mean, are just really good at what they do. And you get, it's almost as if dominoes are falling. And you get a few businesses to participate, and then everybody wants a seat at the table. But you have to have an organizational structure where if I'm making a big financial commitment, I'm at least on some kind of rotating basis going to have a board seat. We're really going to be able to exert influence on how that money is spent, rather than give it away and then hope that, you know, an arm of the county manages properly. Put it at sort of political risk, or it may go towards recruitment this type of business or that type of business. But to me, it sounds like the most successful. You go through these fundraising campaigns. There's like a 5-year pledge or something like that, and they're raising hundreds of thousands, about millions of dollars in some counties that aren't any larger and don't appear to have any more wealth than what we have here, or any businesses that would have, you know, be more inclined to donate. So that's your seed money that sets you right for a period of time. And then I'm making, speaking as a business, the business makes a pledge to membership. The business gets a seat on the board, or, you know, has some say on how that money is spent, gets an opportunity to see how they could potentially benefit from economic expansion in the area. Local economy grows, new businesses come, my existing business should benefit, right? And then it just sort of becomes self-perpetuating, and you have some, you're insulated to a certain extent from an annual budget that the county would put together, changes in you know, the slate of commissioners, where you may get a new, you know, a new group, and then they have a preference for moving economic development in a different direction, and just don't have the luxury of taking the time that's necessary. You're not going to recruit a big business in a short period of time. Everybody knows that. So, but yet the county does have, in some of these instances, not just a couple of officials that serve as ex officios, you know, just as a courtesy or for appearance sake. The county commissioners or the municipalities have one or more representatives on the board, so there's some balance between government and private. Because you're going to need government cooperation when it comes to permitting, rezoning, and if there are going to be any incentives that are utilized to try to close a deal or whatever.
Yeah, the input of the county city managers and the people like that, their input in the process is so important, you know, to help.
But then there's some balance which they don't have complete control over.
And I wonder too, is that, you know, obviously we have a structure issue, but then, you know, the skill, you know, we lack in certain expertise and skills too, because I just struggle, because I hear about even here, this is a pure county model, but they have, a marketing person, a branding person. It just, make it work with, a model that's similar to ours.
Yeah, they have a team that seems to be working under some good leadership.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe it's not skills, but just, expertise. The first group we heard, clearly they have expertise in, development, site development, shell building development, but just, it's not just a structure. I think we have to also make sure that we're very clear in our recommendations that there's certain expertise we're going to need in the town to be successful.
Well, it's so important to understand the history and context. If the county has been on sort of a perennial basis for years, if not decades, making the kind of commitment to have a 6-person, 7-person staff, the building,
Yeah,
et cetera.
yeah.
It's hard when there are so many pressures on the budget, even during good times. If the budget now is just throwing out, $100,000, and that's inadequate to try to
Yeah,
get them
yeah.
to increase it to $500,000 when you have so many other areas that are also then going to say, wait a minute, there was a 500% jump in that category. Well, we should be getting more. And that's why I think this independent private
Yeah.
funding, and that's really what we're looking at, right? Funding.
Mhm.
How do we set up a model where there can be funding? Because you could bring in all the talent in the world. We could say we're going to focus here. These are our greatest resources. This is what we need to tout. But if you don't have the funds to pull it off, or they're at risk every year,
Yeah.
that's really what we're here to solve. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
Kind of bridge that gap because we don't, like you said, we don't know every election season. We don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what kind of funding you're going to get, the commitment to the funding. Priorities may be for those people. That's the big challenge. So yeah.
And realistically, if you had a new commissioner come in and he or she was going to be a champion of economic development, that was the platform that they ran. How much can they expect to increase the budget in 1 or 2 years? If you doubled it, I still don't think we have the kind of resources necessary to compete with some of these other counties.
I
So
like
it's got to
the
be private.
private side of it, having that separated piece. Hopefully some insulation away from the political part of it.
Yeah.
And also that private side, being able to free will and go and do so many
Yeah,
different
yeah.
things that is restricted to sometimes with government. I think that that is, I feel very strongly that's going to be a huge key to moving forward to get more business in the industry here.
Okay, so she was, that was our last formal presentation. I don't know if there's any other economic development people that you all want to interview or talk with. It's, I'll leave it up to you, but we're kind of getting down to the end where we're starting to, you guys are starting to formulate something. What do you need from me to help in any shape, manner, form, as far as more information, data, anything like that?
So are we off the camera?
I know we need to sign off.
So
So we're done, and I'll just need a motion to adjourn here.
I'll make-
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
All right, and then we are
So
finished.